Good evening, I'm Michael, and you're watching Kini News, the show that brings you today's biggest stories. Our episode today is going to be a little different because it's time to look at Budget 2021. In case you missed Finance Minister Tengku Zafrul tabling the budget in Dewan Rakyat earlier today, here are the key highlights.
Finance Minister Tengku Zafrul Abdul Aziz tabled the Perikatan Nasional Government's first budget in the Dewan Rakyat since coming to power in March. Budget 2021 is 322.54 billion ringgit and is the largest budget on record. Several highlights for the budget are as follows. A total of 1 billion ringgit will be allocated to curb the third wave of COVID-19 infections. Among others, the allocation will go towards the provision of personal protective equipment or PPE and hand sanitizer to Ministry of Health frontline personnel and allocation to the National Disaster Management Agency to coordinate efforts to combat COVID-19. The Bantuan Sara Hidup or BSH cash handout policy will be rebranded as Bantuan Prihatin Rakyat. Under the revised policy, cash handouts are as follows. Zafrul says households with a combined monthly income of 2,500 ringgit and below will receive 1,000 ringgit. Families with more than 2 children will receive 1,800 ringgit. Households with an income of between 2,501 and 4,000 ringgit will receive 800 ringgit, while families with more than 2 children will receive 1,200 ringgit. Households with an income between 4,001 ringgit and 5,000 ringgit will receive 500 ringgit, while families with more than 2 children will receive 750 ringgit. Singles with an income of less than 2,500 ringgit will receive 350 ringgit. The age limit to claim this sum was also reduced to 21, down from 40. Employees' Provident Fund or EPF contributions will decrease to 9% from 11% beginning the 1st of January for a 12-month period to increase disposable income. EPF will also allow account 1 withdrawals of up to 500 ringgit a month for 12 months from the 1st of January next year. The My30 Unlimited Travel Card, which is only costing 30 ringgit for public transport in the Klang Valley, will be extended to Penang and Kuantan. The government will not be extending the loan moratorium scheme. However, Tengku Zafrul adds that banks are allowing those from the B40 category to choose from 2 options if they have trouble paying. They can either choose a 3-month moratorium or reduce their monthly installment payments by half for 6 months. Those in the M40 category can rework their financial packages through a self-declaration process if they experience an income reduction. This will begin in the December of 2020.
With the budget out of the way, here's a look at the country's latest COVID-19 situation.
The Health Ministry reported 1,775 new cases of COVID-19 today. Out of these, 3 were imported cases. The imported cases involved travel from Saudi Arabia, South Africa, and Myanmar. For the local cases, Sabah continued to report the highest number of cases with 1,199. This was followed by Penang with 192 cases and Selangor with 164. Labuan reported 59 cases and Negeri Sembilan had 45. There were 83 patients in the intensive care unit, with 32 requiring ventilator support. 2 new deaths were also reported, bringing the total death toll in Malaysia to 279 cases.
Many universities in Belgium have been forced to return to remote learning just weeks after reopening to students for the first time since March.
Students at the Free University of Brussels, or VUB, attended one of their last in-person classes as the school shifted to Code Red, one step away from a full lockdown. Under the heightened alert, all lectures are now given online, but practical sessions and lab work can still be done in person. For now, first-year students are still allowed to attend small group classes on campus. But some are worried it won't be long before they too are stuck at home.
Personally, I don't like to study at home. It's really difficult because I get fast distracted. But yeah, here at the uni you are more focused.
I like to ask a lot of questions, but when with doing online lessons, you don't have that much access to the teachers.
The 17,000 students at the VUB only returned to the classroom last month after a nationwide lockdown pushed learning online in March. This time around, the school says it's better prepared after having invested millions of euros in new equipment to better facilitate online classes and hiring more support staff for teachers who are navigating a new world of blended learning. Universities across Belgium have reverted to remote learning as the number of coronavirus infections spirals. The average number of new cases reported daily is now 4 times higher than in the peak of the first wave.
A recent wildfire in Syria not only killed 2 people, but also destroyed swaths of forests and farmland, depriving many farmers of their means of livelihood.
A recent wildfire in Syria has not only killed 2 people and forced many to flee, but also destroyed swaths of forest, farmland, and orchards, depriving many farmers of their livelihood. 1 month after hundreds of hectares were burned in the countryside of Syria's coastal Latakia, Tartus, and Homs provinces, the devastation is still very visible. Many orchards were destroyed, putting orchard workers in desperate conditions. The 75-year-old Yunus Ibrahim is one of them.
ما بيجعوا قلبه عليه مثل الولد نصبي مثل الولد تربيه يعني ما نربيها مثل الولد طلع هذا مو حرام يحترق هالزيتون هذا ويخيس روح ما بلقيت شيء يعني كان بتفكر طالع موسم زيت يكفيها لكذا سنه هلا ما ضل ولا عندش خلص.
About 100 fruit trees in Ibrahim's orchard were burned in the fire. When the fire started on the 9th of October, he also tried to call for help, but the firefighters were unable to reach their village because the road was blocked. Ibrahim said the monthly pension provided by the government was only enough for him to live for 10 days. Before the fire, this orchard was an important source of livelihood for him and his wife. Although the fire was extinguished, the lives of 2 elderly people have run into unprecedented trouble.
Coming up next, coronavirus cases continue to rise in the US. The United States set a daily record for new coronavirus cases on Thursday.
Coronavirus cases in the United States surged by around 120,000 cases on Thursday, according to a Reuters tally. This is the second consecutive daily record rise as the outbreak spreads in every region. US cases have risen by over 100,000 for 3 out of the last 7 days, putting pressure on hospitals in several states and causing families to rethink their plans for Thanksgiving dinner on November 26. 20 out of the 50 states reported record one-day increases on Thursday. While the spread of the virus is wide, the outbreak is hitting the Midwest particularly hard, based on daily new cases per capita. Illinois reported nearly 10,000 new cases on Thursday, and along with Texas, is leading the United States in the most cases reported in the last 7 days. Some cities and states have announced new measures, such as curfews or reduced gathering sizes to combat the spread of the virus, but the United States has taken no action at the federal level. 17 out of 50 states do not require masks. In addition to rising cases, US hospitalizations of COVID-19 patients rose to over 52,500 on Thursday, up for an 11th consecutive day and getting closer to the record of just over 53,000, which was set in July. In recent days, 6 states have reported their highest one-day increases in pandemic deaths, which are Arkansas, Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, West Virginia, and Wyoming. The pandemic has affected nearly every aspect of American life, including a record number of voters mailing in their ballot in Tuesday's election.
Protests flared across the US yesterday as tensions ran high over the presidential race.
Backers of President Donald Trump and his Democratic rival Joe Biden staged competing demonstrations on Thursday at voting centers in US states where final vote tallies could determine who occupies the White House for the next 4 years. Protests have been scattered and small since Americans went to the polls on Tuesday, defying pre-election fears that tensions could erupt into violence or riots. In Arizona, a crowd of President Donald Trump's supporters, some armed, gathered outside an election center on Wednesday night after rumors swirled that their votes for the Republican were deliberately not being counted. Trump campaigners have come up with the slogan to protect the vote as the president goes to court in several states to challenge some categories of ballot, such as those arriving in the mail after Election Day, or to demand recounts. Biden supporters have adopted the slogan, "Count every vote," saying that a complete and accurate tabulation in the remaining battleground states would show the former vice president had won the 270 electoral votes needed to win. Most demonstrations in cities around the country have been peaceful and small, sometimes amounting only to a few dozen people with signs standing in a city center. Meanwhile, from Portland, Oregon to New York City, protesters demanded that every vote be tallied. And in Philadelphia, on Thursday morning, both factions appeared outside a vote-counting center, where election staff steadily worked through a mountain of still unaccounted for mail-in ballots. Hoping to avoid Election Day crowds during the coronavirus pandemic, More than 100 million Americans submitted ballots during early voting this year, a record-breaking number.
The United Arab Emirates is pushing sustainability measures as it tries to become more self-reliant.
Food waste in the UAE is a big problem, costing an estimated $3.5 billion per year, and the government is trying to halve that by 2030. In one hotel kitchen, a chef throws food scraps into a smart garbage, equipped with a scale and cameras. It's part of an attempt to help commercial kitchens use artificial intelligence to measure food waste.
We have reduced food that goes to landfill by 107 tons so far. We have reduced 407 tons of CO2 emission. We have prevented that from being released into the atmosphere. Around 260,000 meals we have prevented from being thrown in the bin.
Food waste is an issue facing the Gulf as a whole. Saudi Arabia throws away an average of 427 kilograms per person annually. Seafood Soak, a Dubai-based e-commerce firm, uses QR codes to track from source to delivery everything from temperature control to fish feed.
So to put that another way, we're already overfishing our oceans, and then once it's under our control, we're wasting a quarter or more of it. That's disgusting. We can't be doing that. Through digitizing the supply chain, as Seafood Souk is doing, we can help to minimize that wastage.
The United Nations estimates 30% of the world's agricultural land is currently occupied to produce food that is never consumed, while waste accounts for around 7% of global greenhouse emissions.
Outdoor dining, which has been a lifeline of much of New York City's pandemic-battered restaurant industry, is helping more than 10,000 restaurants across New York stay in business.
Where cars once crawled bumper to bumper in New York City's Chinatown, tables and chairs have lined famous Mott Street, where diners can safely eat outdoors. The city recently allowed indoor dining to resume at 25% occupancy. As winter approaches, the restaurant industry hopes that the city can safely increase the occupancy of indoor dining soon. Eateries like Wok Wok in New York City's Chinatown saw their business fall by around 50% since early January, according to non-profit group Send Chinatown Love.
Prefer to sit outside. They're still worried about the coronavirus, and even though outside is full, they're willing to wait for a while.
Meanwhile, at the Upper West Side, French Rose has installed plexiglass screens and expanded its outdoor seating area to prepare the space for the winter.
Now for fall and winter, we put up the tents, and we'll keep going from here. Eventually there'll be heating put into the tents. There's lights for at nighttime, so we're going to keep trotting through. As long as people want to sit outside, we'll be outside.
The number of bar and restaurant closures has been hard to quantify, but an estimated 150,000 people have remained out of work across the industry, according to Regi.
And that is all for me today. For more stories, you can go to KiniTV.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and Facebook for the latest news updates. I'll be back with more next week, same time, same place. I'm Prasad Michael. Thank you for watching.